Hi, I'm Deb from Gr8 Sisters. Today we're going to talk about Fair Island Colourwork and how we get those floats across the back sitting really beautifully. We've had some emails from people saying, when I do floats in Colourwork, it's too tight. And how do we get jumpers like my Lovebirds by Kate Oates? And there's a beautiful jumper that Janine often wears, so perfectly flat. And what it is about how you actually manage the floats across the back. So when we're talking about floats, here I am making, I'm kind of getting up to, almost up to my underarms. It's called the Gr8 Gingham Raglan by Jessie Maid. Now, sorry about my pattern. Janine's just been giving me a hard time saying I need something like
the project portfolio.
I totally need that. And then I was like, yeah, but I carry it around in my handbag. So how do I fit that in my handbag too? Anyway, we'll have to deal with that another day. So I'm making this. It's a really fabulous pattern because it's very simple. So if you're quite new to Colourwork and you want something that's just quite repetitive and quite easy to follow, this is great. Because it really is just that kind of square gingham pattern. And on the back, when we're talking about floats, we're talking about all of these yarns across here that get carried across the back behind your knitting. Now, if you pull them too tight, what can happen, and I can show it to you here a little bit because I haven't actually steamed or blocked this at all. See how just here, it looks like it's puckering. Now, if you pull it too tight, no matter how much blocking or steaming you'll do, you'll never get that out and you'll kind of end up with these bobbles, or sort of like your knitting is bubbling underneath. And so the trick to make that happen is to make sure that your floats are loose enough at the back. And sometimes they seem way too loose, but it's okay because when you actually do then block it, it just all evens out and it ends up looking really beautifully flat. So I'll show you how I do it to make sure that I don't have that problem. Janine, should we come around behind me? So I do two-handed colour work. So I hold one in my left hand and one in my right hand. And what we're going to do here, we're in a little pattern where we're alternating. So I'll just get past that. Oh, that was actually a good spot to show you. So see here, if you've got all your stitches quite close together, we're going to then use this one. Now I'm using Peppin 8 for the turquoise, and this is Life in the Long Grass Sport Merino. So I've got a lovely mix of two different yarns. The Peppin 8 is actually knitting up to a really good 5-ply gauge. So I love using those two together. So yeah, if you've got it all bunched up close, your stitches close together, when you do that stitch, see how it's actually very tight across the back there. And if you try and spread it out, see how it's really, really tight like that. So my trick is when I'm doing that float, so say we're coming up to the next bit where I've just knitted all of those turquoise bits and I now need to use this one, I spread my stitches a really long way apart and then I do my stitch like that. So at the back, it's quite loose. So no matter how wide you pull it, there's plenty of yarn there to actually spread across that little gap. So I'll just show you again. So you've just done all your stitches on the turquoise. Coming up to change your colour, you spread it really quite wide apart, and then you do that next stitch there like that. So that's all. And we're doing 1-1 now. So it doesn't really matter when you're doing when you're doing them close together. And now we're going to do some blue. So let me get across to my next section. So see how they're all tight up there? Spread them apart and then do that next colour. Okay, so that's it. Now sometimes you might be doing colour work on a sleeve, so it's a really tight circumference. And one trick that you can do is actually turn everything inside out. You don't need to do it on a jumper so much because it's It's quite a big circumference. But if you've just got that tiny, tiny little circle that you're going around, if you turn it inside out, you can imagine the distance around the outside is actually larger than if you were doing it on the inside. Does that make sense? So if you turn it inside out, you can knit it exactly the same. You still keep going around, but the yarn naturally has to go further when it's on the outside of your project. So give that a go. If you're really struggling still, we can always help you. We can show it to you in person if possible. And we do have, we do still can do private classes on Zoom as well. Linda can do those. But I hope that helps you just fix that colour work and make it absolutely beautiful.